Rotarians, welcome to the meeting number 5,260 since this club was founded. It's also the month of my 56th wedding anniversary. And 4 years ago, today at 2:30 this afternoon marks the date that I retired from the practice of law so I could sit back and enjoy my sunset years. Right. Well, happy birthday to all you July babies. Please note that today is also Mel Matsushima's birthday. He's a retired dentist and a former president of our club back in 2001, 2002. Here's something you may not know about Mel. He is the last oldest son of the oldest son of a line of samurai. It goes back 800 years.
Oh.
It's 29 generations. In Japan, he would be a shogun. Sorry he couldn't join us today because he's having to undergo physical therapy treatments, but he says he's feeling much better. Happy birthday, Mel. Let's see. Today we have one of our shining lights in our constellation of Rotarians, Irvi Smith. Irvi joined our club in 1990, 3 years after women were first admitted into Rotary. She's a professional fundraiser and has raised millions of dollars for nonprofits. She's a consultant to banks, has chaired the YMCA for almost 40 years, I think. People who know her might never guess she's an expert at fly fishing. Irvi, hit us with your inspirational thought for the day.
Okay, thank you, President Fernando. Well, like some of you, I wake up in the morning and say, why get up with all that is going on in our world and nothing is constant but change? I could just put my head under a pillow and have a little pity party, but instead I decide to adopt an attitude of gratitude and count my blessings. I choose to count my blessings, my healthy family, a nice home where I can work remotely, and I get to work with a wonderful and passionate group of the social sector in our community. My nonprofit clients are truly my inspiration, many of whom are represented here in Rotary. They are out there working tirelessly these days to continue delivering their services during this pandemic. There are those who are on the front line helping with COVID screening, providing tons of food, shelter, and clothing to those in need. I've been Zooming with them on a regular basis, and they all remain very positive and upbeat while going through these tough times. I'm also inspired by the younger people stepping up to volunteer. The teens at my church are busy shopping for seniors that they don't have, so they don't have to get out there and expose themselves to the virus. They're also bagging and delivering food to the needy that's been donated by church members and doing some babysitting as well. A sister and brother team in San Jose who are home from college and high school for the shelter order have formed a volunteer group to sew and distribute face masks to healthcare workers. To date, they've donated over 1,000 masks made by people around the city, and they took them directly to Valley Medical Center Foundation, and I saw some of those the other day when I was over there. These are the people who inspire me and give me hope that there are better days to come. So I'll close with a quote from one of my favorite authors, C.S. Lewis. You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, Irvi. That's very moving words. Thank you. Let's say I don't think you're from Los Gatos to begin with, are you?
No, I was born in Texas.
Oh, I thought it was Bakersfield. But
You've said that for the last 50 years, Fernando.
I know. Well, thanks very much for agreeing to give us that inspirational thought for the day. Next, we've got Mick Greco. He's the Executive Vice President and Director of Development for Joint Ventures Silicon Valley, where they do research and analysis of trends which impact our valley. He's going to update us on the Rotary Playguard. Mick.
Great. Thank you very much, Fernando. It's a pleasure to chat with you all again today. A few weekends ago, I had the great opportunity to serve as a member of our own Steve Borkenhagen and John Ball's Urban Confluence Community Competition Panel. Our humble panel was asked to recommend a selection of designs for an iconic landmark to be built here in San Jose, which I'm sure you all have heard of. Made me think, what makes an iconic landmark? Our panel discussed that question, and I'd like to share some things we generally all agreed on. Respect for and integration with our region's natural beauty, a reflection of our community's values, and inclusivity and accessibility for all ages and abilities. The exercise in general couldn't help but remind me of an existing iconic landmark in San Jose, one that seamlessly builds with and pays homage to its natural surroundings, is a clear reflection of the values we hold most dear, and is recognized globally for its innovative and inclusive design, our own Rotary Playgarden. As you know, the Playgarden was our club's centennial gift to the city of San Jose. This year, the Playgarden celebrated its anniversary, and pandemic notwithstanding, next year expects to see its 1 millionth visitor. It's an unmitigated success story, a community asset, and one of our club's most visible and important contributions to date. The Rotary Playgarden Advocates Committee focuses its efforts on advocacy and awareness of this tremendous gift to the region, and more specifically on the annual Rotary Playgarden Family Picnic. Last year's picnic drew approximately 250 attendees, a mix of Rotarians, their families, and a large and excited contingent from Parents Helping Parents, a community nonprofit providing important support to the families of children with alternative needs. You can see a few pictures from last year's events here, and please note, I have no guilt showing pictures of my son. This year, our goal is to bring our club back to the Playgarden. Knowing full well the challenges that the pandemic will present to gatherings of any type for the foreseeable future, we would still like to reintroduce the Playgarden as a home away from home for our club. Service projects, picnics, off-sites, retreats, and more are all still viable uses of the Playgarden, and we sincerely hope that when we can gather in mass again for our family picnic, we will draw not just a few, but scores of Rotarians of their families for fellowship, food, and fun. I'll keep this brief and just add one final point. I do have an ask today. Please join our committee. We are, as Deanna Persai would say, a small but mighty group. But I would say that the only thing better than a small and mighty group is a big and mighty group. We need your input on how we can better utilize this great asset, and we need your support to make it happen. So please reach out to me if you're interested. It's going to be a really great year for the Playgarden Advocates Committee.
Thanks, Mick. You're doing a fine job, and thank you for taking over from Deanna Persai, who's heading up our Rotary Climate Action Committee. I think that the work that we're doing is certainly a benefit to our community, and we have to be proud, and we should be proud of all the work that our committees do. And if those of you who are listening want to get involved with something that's fun, make a call. He'll be happy to show you around, and maybe you can take some of your own children or grandchildren to it. Let's see. We've got Catherine Cook, who's going to be talking next. She's a member of our International Services Committee, and she's a founder and the Chief Development Officer for a school in Tanzania. And she's going to tell us about a mini loan nonprofit agency called Kiva, K-I-V-A, Kiva. Catherine, are you with us? Come in, Catherine Cook. Unmute yourself.
I am muted. I'm here, finally.
All right. Hit it.
Yes, well, thanks, Fernando. As Fernando mentioned, I'm part of the International Service Committee, and one of the things that our committee does is facilitate a Kiva account. So I'm just going to give you a little background on what Kiva is first, and then talk about how we're involved. So Kiva is an international nonprofit. It was founded in 2005 in San Francisco with the mission to expand financial access to help underserved communities. And this is all done via microloans. So via this crowdfunding, some of the things that can be supported: students can pay for tuition, women can start businesses, farmers are able to invest in equipment, and families can afford needed emergency care. That's just a small sample. So this is how Kiva works, or how crowdfunding in general works. A borrower applies for a loan. The loan goes through the underwriting and approval process. The loan is posted to Kiva for lenders to support. Lenders crowdfund the loan in increments of $25 or more. The fundraising is complete. The borrower repays the loan, and the lenders then use their repayments to fund new loans, donate, or withdraw the money. So it's a great way to sort of have this cycle of money just continue to serve people in underserved areas. So basically, fund a loan, get repaid, fund another loan. And with Kiva, 100% of every dollar lent goes to funding loans. So it's really an amazing organization and kind of was a pioneer in the crowdfunding world back in 2005. So our Rotary Club was started by past President Stu Park in July of 2014 with a $10,000 deposit, which was funded by members of our club. He was responsible for inviting a representative from Kiva to pitch
of maintaining a pandemic in these facilities where isolation is usually used as a form of punishment, all while loved ones search.
Can you hear me?
Ken Weiner, can you mute your phone there, Ken Weiner?
Prisoners in the hold.
Shall I keep going or shall I wait?
Ken, mute yourself. There we go.
Okay. So hopefully for the last part of that, 100% of every dollar lent goes to funding loans. Our past president, Stu Parks, started our Rotary Kiva account in 2014 with $10,000, which was funded by members of our club. He was responsible for inviting a representative from Kiva to pitch the idea to the International Service Committee. And that initial $10,000 investment has now generated over $40,000 in loans. So much gratitude to Stu for bringing this program to our Rotary Club. I've been the administrator for the past 2 years. As an organization, we've made 237 loans and supported individuals in 68 countries. Our most recent loans have been made to support COVID-related needs in both healthcare and for small businesses and entrepreneurs. So I just want to give you one example of one of the people that we've recently assisted. This is Gabriella from Paraguay. Gabriella earns her living washing and ironing clothing. In the months before the pandemic, she was making pudding that she sold on order and occasionally to customers who requested her products. She mentions that the crisis that has occurred in the world with the spread of COVID-19 has stopped her from working normally and generating the means with which to help her family, and this has affected her business. She is requesting this loan so she can invest in the purchase of ingredients and can continue to make her products like sugar, milk, bread, essences, vanilla, etc., etc. She is grateful for the opportunity she is receiving to access this loan and be able to get ahead. So, the International Service Committee has consistently endorsed continuing with Kiva. Again, I think it's a great program. And when I first signed on as the administrator, when Mike Fulton was the chair of the International Service Committee and was looking for somebody, I told him that I have spent the past 25 years raising money and I'm thrilled to finally be able to give it away. So it's been a great experience for me, and I'm really, really proud of our club for supporting this organization. So thank you.
Thank you, Catherine Cook. Thank you very much. Here's a new idea for you. Breakout rooms. At our board directors meeting here, Dr. Karen Philbrick said, our members miss having an opportunity to talk with each other in the way we used to when we used to meet in person. She thinks we could use a chance to talk with others about common problems and suggested we try breakout rooms, say for about 20 minutes before our regular meeting. So we selected 4 topics: issues affecting small businesses, elder care, details for nonprofits, parents at home with children. Those are 4 topics we just thought might be of interest. And so we're going to send out details in an email link to be sent next Monday by our executive director, Leslie Hamilton. The topics will be listed, and please note you have to register in order to get into that room that you select. This is something we want to try to see if that works. These are just topics we selected. If you got other topics you'd like to have featured, let us know, let Leslie know, and we'll see if we can plug those in, because we can have more than 4 breakout rooms. We can have several more than that. So please look for that, and we'll try to make it a chance for you to talk with people who have a particular interest in that topic that you select. Now, we're going to send, I mentioned this before last week, there's a survey that we need to do of gender, race, and ethnicity. So we need to get a baseline to know the makeup of our club, and we need to measure our progress as we try to invite more women in to the club and more minorities. Someone once said, you can't manage what you can't measure. So we want to be able to measure it. So we appreciate your prompt response. I've got to send that survey out, and this is a reminder to me to send it to our office, to Executive Director. Now, here's another one. As some of you may know, English is my second language, which I learned while attending 16 schools by the time I graduated from San Jose High, as we harvested crops around California. When asked by our staff what mechanism I would like to see raise funds for our Rotary Foundation, I thought, ever since I joined Rotary in 1983, we've always levied fines for some perceived transgressions, such as having a cell phone go off during a meeting or not wearing a pin while you're taking a shower. The following occurred to me. The word fine, when used as a noun, means something like a punitive payment. However, when the word fine is used as an adjective, it becomes a positive, as in ringing the bell. It's not a fine, it's a fine opportunity. In this case, you would have a fine opportunity to celebrate a special occasion, such as a birthday, an anniversary, grandchild, retirement, promotion, or maybe you just want to contribute to the Rotary Foundation so our committees can fund their charitable work. Starting next month, not this month, next month, August, we're going to give you a fine opportunity to contribute to our foundation for whatever reason you have for ringing the bell. Gay Crawford, a fine Rotarian, if there is one, agreed to help coordinate this. So send an email to her at gayc@aol.com, telling her what it is you want to celebrate and how much you want to contribute. And I'll announce it in the following meeting. I'll remind you during this month, the month of August, to contact Gay, and we'll ring the bell on the last Wednesday of every month. However, Gay has a big event she wants to announce on August 19th and wants to take advantage of that. To ring the bell by being the first to contribute $100. So we'll look for her on August 19th. And let's see if that works. Also, I wanted to say that this is just an experiment. We haven't tried this before in this way. It's always been in the sense of a negative, and I wanted to see if we could do it as a positive, to focus on the positive things in your life, to work in giving money to our foundation so you can appreciate the work our foundation does, and does by funding the committee's work and by making sure that our money is well spent, is husbanded well. We watch it very carefully. And this is something that I've asked the foundation, the Rotary Foundation, to come back and tell us about the many things that they do, because I don't think that I ever appreciated how much work the foundation does behind the scenes. I'd like to see that brought to the forefront so that more of us can understand it, and obviously to make us feel a bit more willing to contribute, because we'll know that it's going to a good cause, that it's going to fund some child's wheelchair or somebody's education, or providing well water in some village in some foreign country. I'd also change subject now to thank our Meeting Summaries Committee. I don't know how many of you go on site to look at those website summaries, but they're artfully done. They're chaired by Larry Sokoloff, with our members, Sal Pizarro, for example, Brian Adams, Dr. Jerry Hansen, and there are others who write these weekly summaries for our meetings. And this is very useful for those who aren't able to attend, particularly on the day like today, like for example, for Mel Matsushima, they can go back and on Fridays, it's when they're usually posted, they'll be able to see, well, what took place, what happened. Maybe he'll get a chance to see that we all wished him a happy birthday. All right, before introducing Larry Donatoni to introduce our program speaker, I want to make sure that you understand the use of this chat box that we have at the bottom of the screen. Use it prior to the program speaker to send out comments to whomever you wish, and that's fine. But once the program speaker starts, we would like to have you just ask questions of the speaker, because that makes it easier for Larry Donatoni and whoever is introducing our program speakers to read the questions that are coming across, to be able to marshal them and gather them easily and ask the questions to our speaker. It's something that we can do to help. I think that they would welcome that, and I presume that all of you want to be as helpful as possible by cooperating in doing that, because sometimes we occupy that space, that chat box, to congratulate each other or to say hello to someone like Sherry Simmons, who's in Phoenix, who some time ago, as I mentioned before the meeting started, she's the reason I was appointed to the board of directors, because Jerry Silva was president, and he said, we need someone to fill it, and he thought maybe I could do the job, and I want to thank Sherry for leaving. So listen, Larry Donatoni, you're the Senior Director for Development and Department of University Relations at Santa Clara University, and you deal with the fundraising, alumni, and marketing. So it's your turn to introduce our speaker for today, and I hope that you'll take it from here. Larry?
Thank you very much, Fernando. Did you wonder what the Vatican and the Markkula Center for Ethics have in common? Today's speaker will address this interaction and his interactions with Pope Francis, the Vatican, to establish a new initiative on artificial intelligence at the Markkula Center at Santa Clara University. Don Heider became executive director of the center in 2018. He serves as the John Courtney S. Murray S.J. University Professor in Social Ethics, and also is an appointed professor in the Department of Communications. Don has extensive experience in communications, journalism, and ethics from Loyola University in Chicago, University of Maryland, and the University of Texas. Don began his career as a TV journalist, receiving 5 Emmy Awards, along with the regional Edward R. Murrow and a Tennessee Associated Press Award. In addition, the University of Texas has honored him with several teaching awards in his role as faculty. Don is the author of 7 books, including A Practical Guide to Digital Journalism Ethics and Ethics in a Digital Age. May we give a very warm San Jose Rotary welcome to Don Heider from Santa Clara University. Don, I know you're there somewhere.
Thanks, Larry. I appreciate it. My first time attending a virtual Rotary Club meeting, I actually visited San Jose Rotary 2 years ago after I had just started at the Markkula Center, and so it's great to be back, at least through the wonder of technology with you all. So I'm going to share my screen with you and go through some a little talk, and then take some questions about this new initiative we have. So just a quick history, for those of you who may not know much about the Markkula Center. Markkula Center was founded over 3 decades at Santa Clara University. It was an initial gift to the center from Mike Markkula, former board chair and CEO of Apple. And we're the largest and most comprehensive applied ethics center in the world. And by applied ethics, that means we try to help people mainly outside of Santa Clara, make better ethical decisions in business, government, nonprofits, etc. So we're launching this new initiative called the Institute for Technology in Ethics and Culture in Silicon Valley in partnership with the Vatican. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it came about and then sort of what the goals are. So it began with us advising a group of folks interested in ideas about technology and humanity, led by Father Brendan McGuire. Brendan's somebody that's been a friend of Santa Clara and a friend of the center, and he has been very passionate and concerned about the future of technology and also sort of its impact on human beings. So that led to our participation in a conference on technology and the common good at the Vatican in the fall of 2019. It was about 130 experts from around the world in ethics and moral theology, and it was a really interesting 2.5-day conference. We had the opportunity to present our framework for ethical decision making. There, sort of in the middle, well, there's Father Brendan, also Brian Green, who is our Director of Technology Ethics at the Center. And then we got a chance to actually meet Pope Francis and hear him give a talk. And it was a very thoughtful presentation he did for the group. And this is one of the quotes out of that talk where he said, "A better world is possible thanks to technological progress if this is accompanied by an ethic inspired by a vision of a common good." So, you know, that was like music to my ears because that's exactly what we work on. We work on technology ethics as one of our 8 areas in the center. So what came out of the conference was the Vatican was interested in having a presence in Silicon Valley. They're interested in keeping up on what's going on with technology and thinking about how it affects human beings and making sure that they're keeping abreast of the latest developments and sort of thinking about how this impacts theology, the church, and also just normal human beings. So we developed a memo of understanding between Markkula Center and the Pontifical Council on Culture, which is one division of the Vatican. It's been funded in part by a generous gift from Dan and Charmaine Warmanhoven, who I'm sure many of you know. And what the purpose of iTech is to convene meetings of thought leaders around the country and around the world, especially around this issue of AI, because AI is obviously of growing concern. AI is part of almost every technology we use now, and so that's our partnership's has a particular focus, and our meetings do on that. We're also helping develop an online library and digital resources. There'll be a joint project between us and this part of the Vatican, so that, and that'll be open to anyone. But just all the intellectual work we do and anything we gather will be a part of that online digital resource. And then also we're working on a digital ethics management framework along with the Pontifical Council. In other words, a way in which companies might be able to manage ethics if they're working on technology. So let me tell you just a few of the issues that we're working on currently. And so we've been, just in the last few months, this all started really just shortly after the beginning of the year, and we thought we were going to be doing face-to-face meetings, but of course that didn't happen. So we've been doing virtual meetings, convening ethicists and moral theologians from across the United States and Europe primarily to write and discuss issues around AI. There's currently 3 groups meeting. One group is concentrated on AI, consciousness, interiority, and the soul. Another group is looking at AI, relationships, and relationality. And the third group is looking at AI, society, ethics, and politics. So a couple of the questions, I just thought it'd be interesting to know a little bit more on the ground level. So what are these theologians and ethicists thinking about, and why? Well, they're trying to identify some of the stickiest issues that AI is raising, and they're also trying to sort of put forward thought leadership on this that the Vatican can use, but really anyone can use in thinking about these issues. So one big question that they're looking at is, are humans more like animals and machines? Now, it seems like a fairly obvious question, but those attempting to make AI, and especially make it think like humans, tend to think of humans as machines, as thinking machines, if you will. And so, but in fact, we know, and I'm a social scientist, I've worked on research with human beings for over 20 years, that humans are complicated, and in many ways we're much more like animals. Yes, we have a brain that operates sometimes like a processor, and we can do sophisticated calculations and forecasting, that kind of thing. But we also have this issue of our own will, you know, what we feel like doing. So animals have their own motive force, so they're motivated by different things, while machines merely do what they're instructed to do. So that's one of the things they're sort of exploring is you know, what are the theological implications of AI and being more like a machine or more like an animal that human beings are. Another question is, some groups that are developing AI are trying to get AI to think like humans. I'd say this is a small strand of what's going on in AI right now, but it's trying to emulate the way humans think with these sophisticated computers. And I'd say a lot of the fear of AI comes from us sort of worrying about this kind of artificial intelligence. I mean, I think back when I think of thinking machines or machines that can think like human beings, of 2001, The Space Odyssey, and HAL. And HAL was the onboard computer, if you remember the movie, that controlled all the environmental systems. The computer pretty much controlled everything on board the spaceship. And HAL ended up not being a human friendly because he could hear and see everything the astronauts were saying, and so he had ideas of his own because he was able to sort of formulate his own ideas. And I think those are the starkest fears about AI. Is what if we develop this incredible system of AI and it becomes sort of all powerful, and it can use all our devices to gather information about us, and then if it begins to make its own decisions about sort of what our future should be, or what the future of like the planet should be. That's a scenario for at least a half a dozen good science fiction novels and films. So what will AI dream up on its own? However, there's really no reason to believe AI currently can have what's called an interior mental life, like human beings can. AI, however, could be simulated to have such a thing if we program AI to do it. And this is, you know, of great concern, I'd say, to even a lot of people who work in the field. So, because as we understand, simulations and real people are not the same, and even in programming, even in the best programming, a lot of times there are unforeseen consequences, and even if you put safeguards in, you may not have anticipated every scenario. So, and then also there's been a sort of a strand of thought that says, well, if we, and this has also been in a lot of science fiction, if a machine can think, should it have rights like human beings should have? So this group is sort of working on this basically contention that confusing the two will lead to social problems in the form of confusing people and objects, persons with human dignity, and persons and things without human dignity. So they're trying to, again, from a moral theology and philosophical perspective, develop arguments on these kinds of topics. I'm going to talk a little bit more about one more. That is, much AI is designed to make things easier for humans. You can think of Siri or Alexis, but the process is mediated by AI. Try harder and harder to cater to our every whim. So especially personal devices, they're trying to make life easier for us at every stage. So we can order groceries through there, watch movies, listen to music, like Siri or Alexa. Alexa will allow you to. But the issue with that is we become more and more impatient with reality, because human beings, other people, don't respond like Siri does at our every whim. And so what happens when people around us aren't as compliant as AI? And what will be the long-term effect of that in terms of our relationship with other people? Will it have an overall negative effect when we expect humans to respond the way AI does? So those are just a few of the issues that we're looking at as part of that group, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. We find the work very fulfilling because it helps us, as we work with tech companies, think about how to best design AI and what ethical considerations they should think about. We have a whole series of materials we help tech companies with that make sure they're doing ethical design. We'd much rather work with a company before they release a product and be part of the design process, but we're also there to help if something goes wrong. So what questions do you have, and how else can I help today? Oh, Larry, sorry, I think you're muted.
Yeah. We have one question, and I guess it's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek question, is that this particular person grew up with livestock and horses and cattle and so forth, and AI was artificial insemination. Does from your perspective and contact, does the Pope have something to say in that regard?
So I am not an expert on Catholic theology, and especially on artificial insemination in animals, so I'm afraid I can't answer that. I will say I do know that technology is being used more and more in agriculture, and AI especially, and it's, they've had great success, for instance, in irrigation systems that can really help you sort of figure out what part of your crops need watering and when, and can help you save a tremendous amount of water and make sure that you're getting water to the right crops at the right time. And there's a number of other AI applications in agriculture. I'm not sure about artificial insemination, though. Sorry.
Don, you mentioned early in your presentation about the ethical decision-making model that is used at the Markkula Center, and how that kind of prompted this movement with the Vatican. Can you provide a little more detail on that?
Yeah, so a number of years ago, folks at the Markkula Center developed a system of decision-making for ethical decisions. And what we do is we have 5 lenses we ask people to look at. And by using those lenses, you can pretty much approach any ethical dilemma you're facing, and those lenses will help you shed more light on it, gather more information, help you with the deliberation process so that you can come to a better ethical decision in the end. Because, really the toughest ethical decisions are not black and white, they're gray. They're where there are multiple solutions and all offer some value. And so what our decision-making process does is sort of help you systematically go through and ask the right questions and gather more information, have a good deliberation, hopefully, about it, and then pick what you feel like is the best and most ethical decision in a situation. So we've been teaching that for 20 years. We're about to update it over the next year, but we feel like it's the basis of almost all the work we do.
We have several questions in regards to the interaction with the local tech companies and tech leaders. How are they responding to your work, and particularly the work with the in AI?
So it's a mixed bag, as you might imagine. No two companies are the same. So we have companies in the Valley that we have very close relationships with, and have forged successful partnerships with. I'd say other companies we may not have heard from. Some companies have developed their own internal ethics team and done a great job with it. But there are definitely some companies that we see that are in the public eye a lot, who we feel like we could offer some help and guidance, but it's a mixed bag. But I would say that we've had the companies who have invited us in to do work with them, we've had very good results. And some of them we can't mention because we have non-disclosure agreements, but we enjoy getting in there. And, as you all know, these companies are filled with people, many of whom have real strong moral compasses and are very concerned about some of the work the companies that they work for are doing. And so by building an ethical process into the company, we give those people an opportunity to have a voice in that and express their concerns, hopefully be part of the solution as well.
Okay. Don, as a follow-up question, which we received here, as we all know that the major tech leaders are presenting today in front of Congress.
I was watching
what
that.
sort of advice might you give them on the antitrust issues that they're trying to address?
Yeah, I think I think it's a very sticky issue. Each of them sort of have their own set of issues that they have to deal with. Some are, and really the question I'd say at the core of each of them is, are they encouraging or discouraging competition? And are they using a huge advantage that they hold to put other people out of business or acquire competition, so that we can't have a flourishing sort of free economy? And I'll leave it up to Congress to decide, but I will say that a number of people who are thoughtful and read about these issues are very concerned about how big and powerful tech is coming. The number one employer of lobbyists in DC is Google. And so we all know they wield a lot of power. And the other thing about Google or any of these companies is a lot of times to average consumers, how they make money and what they're doing with our data isn't always transparent. And so, that would be one thing we'd advocate for ethically, is more transparency from Google. They're never going to tell us how their algorithm works, but they could be more transparent about sort of the parameters, so that when you do a search on Google, what comes up first? Is it companies that they have an advertising relationship with or not? How level is the playing field? The good news is, in any of these spaces, but especially in web search, there are a number of viable alternatives that I think are becoming popular with people because they're worried about the power of Google and also what's happening with their search information.
We have a question related to AI in the military, and how is that being used here and abroad, and what are some of the implications for the future?
I think one of the stickiest issues is this idea of autonomous weapons that are being developed by almost every powerful government around the world, and that's this idea that a weapon system would you would program a weapon system to make its own decisions about whether to take someone's life or not. And again, I think the ethical implications are pretty huge. What AI is good at is making sort of analytical decisions, simple analytical decisions, very quickly, very sophisticated, at a very sophisticated level. but they're not human beings. And so even if you program morality into the machine, will it make the right decision? And I mean, what we've seen already, for instance, with facial recognition software is it is very far from perfect. And so if facial recognition is part of a autonomous weapon, what guarantees are there that civilians' lives won't be taken, or that it won't be a friendly fire situation where your own troops aren't killed by the autonomous weapon? So that's one of the complex situations. You know, what I've found in my experience doing tech ethics is that when you link AI with human judgment, I think you get something very powerful, but it keeps the humanity and the ethical, it can keep the ethical decision making as part of the process. So right now we're pretty far off from letting AI make complex moral judgments, I'd say.
We have a question here regarding a movie called Her, and I don't know whether you're familiar with that.
I've seen it, yes.
I think the question, and I'll just read it, is that the main character fell in love with an AI entity, and one can understand, given loving that she was, AI found it difficult to compete. Can you share a little bit about your perspective on that?
Well, I do think it's interesting to think about our relationships with AI and with devices. You know, they've done a study in Japan where they put sort of cuddly animals that were programmed with AI into nursing homes. And the residents understood that they were robotic, but they're still cuddly, and they coo and they make noises when you pet them. And they found that the people liked them, and that they felt like their quality of life improved as a result of these, like you would with any pet, I guess. So it's interesting and also a bit disturbing because we don't like to feel that human beings can be replaced with machines. And that's really the whole premise of Her. I heard a statistic on National Public Radio this weekend that people's affection towards Alexi and Siri has increased by like 12% since the lockdown. And again, in terms of their sort of personal feelings towards them. So again, you can see why, because we're probably more dependent upon them. And just as I pointed out in that question, they're often more cooperative than other humans that we're living with. But I do think it has big ethical implications because, you know, we don't want to surround ourselves all the time with things and people that agree with us constantly. I think that's part of being a human, is to, in human interaction, is to have a dissenting voice, or somebody who can be a voice of reason or put us in check. So I do think, though, that as technology gets more sophisticated, this idea of human-robot interaction and human interaction is going to become increasingly problematic, and there already is an alternative for some people.
Don, in your presentation, you shared the philanthropic support that was provided by Anne and Charmaine Warmenhoven, and knowing that is Dan, I know, as a very prominent leader in technology here in our valley. What prompted them to want to support this initiative, which is a little different than what you would customarily see from a high-tech CEO?
No, I agree exactly. I just think it's the sort of the win-win of it is folks who and a number, not just the Vatican, a number of religious organizations are becoming more and more concerned about technology and AI. But I think it's especially attractive to think about the fact that this committee, this Pontifical Committee of the Vatican, is trying to call on some of the very brightest people in the world in terms of ethics and theology to sort of help think through some of the ethical implications of technology and AI, and to sort of write some position papers, sort of, and I can't help but feel those will help guide decisions and policies made by the Vatican and the Pope ultimately. And so I think, again, you know, we love the idea of getting more information from some of the best people before you make a decision about anything. And so to me, that is part of the appeal about this project, is that it's this sort of great merger between the Vatican, which already has some great scholars and thinkers in it, but also then some of the brightest and best from around the world to sort of think through what some of the big issues we're going to be facing in the next 5, 10, 20 years are. And I think that was the appeal to Dan and Charmaine as well.
We have a question in regards to a follow-up to your comments on warfare, military, and so forth. What is kind of the perspective in terms of AI as it relates to driverless vehicles and concerns and opportunities, and how those systems and models might relate to moral judgments?
It's a big question. I think it's why, you know, it looked like driverless cars were sort of coming quickly, and then there's been a bit of a slowdown. We're part of a thing called the Partnership on AI, which is a nonprofit that was started by some of the big tech companies, Microsoft, Google, and others. And they have different groups that are working on policy, and one of them is that actually Brian Green, who I mentioned, who spoke to Rotary 2 years ago, is working on, and that is this idea of AI as it might harm human beings. And driverless cars is first and foremost concern in that group. And I think it's also been sort of a daunting task for the companies that are thinking about doing driverless cars, because who's going to decide, you know, it's sort of a classic philosophical question. Who's going to decide if a car has to make a decision about whether to kill the driver of the car, the passengers of the car, or a pedestrian in a split second? What's that decision going to be? And how much, as the owner and driver of the car, how much influence would you have over that decision? And would you be willing to turn that over to a machine, or do you want that judgment yourself? So, you know, I think that's why, in part, we have seen a bit of a slowdown. And believe me, you know, driverless cars are really good in clear weather during the day on flat stretches of highway. Not many of us drive those conditions consistently. They're not as good at night in storms with traffic, and we all know, you know, the most dangerous thing about driving are the other drivers who are often completely unpredictable. And so I think we've still got a ways to go before we're there with driverless vehicles.
In terms of the relationship with the Vatican, I know the MOU was signed here very recently, but I know there were activities leading up to that and things that have happened before. Can you kind of outline specifically some of the real things that have come out of this relationship?
Just so far, just what I outlined in the presentation, which is we've the very first thing we've done is start doing these convenings, and this is driven by, you know, the Pontifical Council on Culture. This is their top priority, was for us to start convening experts from around the world in ethics and moral theology, and then they're sort of helping guide some of the questions we're looking at. Like, what's the difference between a human and a machine, and how does that affect the way AI is programmed? And so we're bringing together people, getting that information, and then we're building this online repository where we're going to, you know, put all this work so people can get access to it. So those are the main tenets of what we're doing at this moment.
We have a question. Is it how have you found is society becoming more ethical as we have centers such as the Markla Center, you know, in other areas in other countries, and how do you approach, you know, the actual teaching of ethics or applied ethics, I should say?
So we feel like I have no idea. I think the world's getting more ethical or less. We like to think that we have a small impact on the companies and organizations we work with. How we go about teaching it is we feel like ethics is not a set of rules. You can have a code of ethics and that's great, but really ethics is an iterative process. So we try to teach the process of ethical decision making, so that when you come to any situation you face, if you have a set of tools and a process you go through, then it will help you, like I mentioned before, gather the information you need, try to view it through several different perspectives, like, for instance, is this one of the approaches we teach is the rights approach. Does this decision value the rights of all people that are involved in the decision? Or another lens we use that's very common is the utilitarian approach, which is does this decision maximize good and minimize harm? And so by using those lenses to sort of help you see the problem from different perspectives, oftentimes you'll find one or two lenses that lend themselves best to a particular dilemma you're facing or decision. And then as you talk through it and sort of consider the implications of it, oftentimes a more clear path emerges. But again, in tough decisions, you know, it's often a complicated process, and sometimes there are multiple ethical solutions.
There's a British series that's out there. We've had a couple questions about this, and it's a British series called The Humans. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not. I'm going to write it down, though.
TV show. So.
Yeah. As long as it's more optimistic than, what's the other one, Black Mirror? Is that the one? There's a sci-fi series of the BBC produces that's very dystopian, let's just say. I mean, they do a great job of teasing out some issues, but it's hard to walk away from an episode with any sense of hope.
Well, thank you, Don. Let me just say it's been very interesting. I have to admit I was very puzzled by the tie between the Vatican and the your applied ethics, but you've described it very well. Thank you. I think it was Irvie Smith who brought you to Rotary, to our Rotary Club a couple of years ago.
It is. Yeah, really, Irvie's a good friend.
Yeah, she's the one that gave our inspirational thought for today. Look, we're going to, we've got an arrangement with our nonprofit organization called Our City Forest, and we're going to plant 46 shade trees out in East San Jose in honor of you and other speakers that come to address our club.
Amazing.
And that's to address the heat islands and the climate change, and to help spruce up their neighborhoods.
That's fantastic.
I want to thank you for that, and I just I know that we've got a lot to learn about ethics, and I'm glad that you're there showing us the way. Let's see. I wanted to make sure that before we close that we make an announcement that Kathleen Thomas has sold these Rotary masks for a total of $350, which she's going to deliver to the Disaster Relief Fund, including some additional help from Tim Hegstrom and Jason Minsky. If your Rotary mask fits too tightly, you can exchange it for a larger one, but give Kathleen Thomas a call. Our speaker next week will be Madeline Fackler. She likes to be called M. She's a senior IT executive and chief information officer for the International Rescue Committee, the IRC. She'll speak about the International Rescue Committee's work and has been described as the most under-recognized and yet most influential non-governmental aid group in the world, helping refugees and displaced persons. There was a program on that on 60 Minutes last Sunday, just coincidental. So that's it. So to paraphrase my favorite immigrant governor, Hasta la vista, Rotarians. This meeting, Zoom meeting stands adjourned. Stay healthy, everyone. Until next week.
Gracias, Fernando.
Sí, como no, Carmen.